Welcome to the Supply Chain Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Sherry Heinisch, joined by co-host James George. And today we are so excited to explore one of the most revolutionary concepts in supply chain transformation right now. And that's making sure that nature is a measurable stakeholder in business operations. We are joined by a pioneer and a super brilliant woman who I had the privilege of spending time with at New York Climate Week a couple weeks ago in New York, Julia. She's the co-founder and CEO of Earth Knowledge, who has pioneered what she calls Integrated Planetary Intelligence. And this is a platform that translates the complexity of all of Earth's natural systems into actionable business insights. Earth Knowledge is a top Microsoft partner and provides information to Fortune 500 companies, most notably California, the fourth largest economy in the world. And Earth Knowledge is now on the NASDAQ DataLink, which serves over 800,000 users. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Thanks, James, for having me on. I'm really honored to join you.
Amazing. So to kick us off, why don't you start with a brief introduction, origin story, connecting the work that you've done in your career and Earth Knowledge's mission for the supply chain transformation into a regenerative future.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, Earth Knowledge is a data infrastructure and analytics company, and we're based on the whole understanding that in order to have the most comprehensive ways to understand risk and opportunities at any location on the globe, we actually have to recreate how the planet actually operates. The planet is a system of systems. So there's hydrologic systems, there's soil systems, there's atmospheric systems, geologic systems. All of these are continually interacting and producing global changes. As we as humans are interacting with the planet, we're affecting it. And so what we do then is the Integrated Planetary Intelligence platform integrates all of these different Earth systems and provides a lens then and a way to be able to measure certain risks and opportunities around the globe.
So for someone in supply chain, what are the type of insights that would be applicable to them through the lens of integrated planetary intelligence?
So the Fortune 500 companies that we work with that are worried about their supply chains, one of the ways that we work with them is they provide us where those locations of the supply chains are. We've built different levels of digital twins. We've got a global digital twin at 1 kilometer with 51 indicators. There are all kinds of different measures of risk, whether it's water risk, flood risk, wildfire risk, drought, energy demand. And so that requires then accelerated energy use. Are there opportunities in other locations? Let's take agriculture industry, for example. So we need to be continually assessing where crops are going to be most fertile and where they're going to grow optimally as global change evolves. So we can, again, look at the worldwide to say where are locations where certain crops would be better suited than they are right now, whether it's winery, grapes. Again, we work in California for the fourth largest economy of the world. They provide over half of the nuts, vegetables, and fruit for the entire nation, as well as are the fifth global supplier for cotton, for example, as well as many other ingredients that go into these products, right? So you need to be able to know with your supply chain, are there water restrictions that are going to be coming up? Are there going to be soil-borne diseases that you need to be aware of that will limit some of the yield of the crop? So there's a lot of different decisions that have to be made that tie into supply chain decisions.
So 1 kilometer resolution. So think about the first few miles of your supply chain in the field, 4 climate land use scenarios, and the differentiator from our discussion earlier was regional twin, which also has 200 indicators at 250 meters, which is really sophisticated.
Yes, what we do with our global twin that you were just describing is we do these 4 different kind of climate scenarios so we can then forecast annually, datally, all the way out to, as you're saying, to 100 when we've gone back to 1900 so we understand what's been evolving in that location up until the present day. With our regional digital twin that's specific to the West Coast, and we have a very specific one for California, we actually can run that every day so that there's daily forecast, each day a 10-day forecast that can provide supply chain managers alerts, whether there's, again, extreme weather events that are going to impair transportation, whether there's going to be water shortages in certain locations that are going to impact data centers, agriculture industry, all kinds of water dependent sectors that it could impact. So the daily forecasts are very fine tuned so that any location within California or in the West Coast, and California specifically, we can then monitor all of these different global changes and provide alerts to those changes that could impact supply chain management.
Julia, I mean, reading up before we spoke and sort of looking at sort of the information you provide on the website, like this is incredibly powerful as a tool. Like your point before about, the sort of system of systems, which I love as a topic, because we talk about systems change and we lose a lot of people in the room. We're now talking about the systems of that. And kind of, how do you, I guess, when you started on this journey, thinking that you needed this sort of model to model Earth in that way, what was the gap that you saw in the way that businesses and governments were managing their data already? Because it feels like the comprehensive nature of what you're bringing through your technology really puts those insights in the hands of the right people.
Yes.
How did you convince people that were maybe a little bit further away from that thinking when you first got started?
So we actually co-founded Earth Knowledge originally in 2003. So we were way ahead of the market at that point. But we knew, and I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. I was part of scaling a company from trailers to going public within 4 years, and I was in management. I was several years with a venture capital firm as a managing partner. So there was a lot of experience that I've brought to Earth Knowledge. But in 2003, we saw that there's brilliant information around the world. It needs to be integrated and made understandable and actionable. But we need to integrate it in a way that actually replicates how the Earth works. So as we've grown Earth Knowledge and the market has exploded in becoming aware of how the planet is changing, extreme weather events have gone from once every 4 months to once every 3 weeks that can cost $1 billion in the US alone. There's become this waking up of, oh my gosh, our supply chains actually are, and our companies are dependent on the Earth in ways that we didn't realize. So that is where we had a lot of pushback over the years of saying, why are you recreating how the planet actually operates? Why don't you be a climate tech company or a water tech company or just focus on agriculture? And we would say, we know those are amazing companies and opportunities, and it's just, we're not going to really have the most comprehensive way to understand how to make the best decisions that are good for the planet, profits, and for people. So unless we can actually recreate how the planet is operating, and then from that information, be able to assess risk and opportunity at any location. So what's happening now as we work with Fortune 500 companies is they're saying, wait a minute, we don't need this just for compliance, for reporting. We actually need this across the departments. We need it for risk management. We need it for real estate. We need it for site acquisition and site selection. We need it for business continuity. We need it for supply chain. We need it for operational management. So the light bulbs are going off the more that we work with people. I think another component of this, James, is the caliber of our team. So Dr. Frank D'Agnese is the one who pioneered and architected the platform originally, the Integrated Planetary Platform. Our director for climate science was President Obama's director, and the White House shares the Nobel Peace Prize. We actually have 5 on our team that are all IPCC or National Climate Assessment authors. Stephen Pulaski is our advisor related to natural. We've just got amazing people who leave their egos at the door and join us to say, we're going to be able to help provide these sustainable decision-making tools that can really help illuminate for government agencies and private sector a way to really make more resilient decisions in the long run so we can leave to generations ahead of us a better, more stable economy, planet, and people and health.
It's amazing. Julia, you mentioned your husband. For people listening, that's one of the things that I found really incredible is that you have partners who are doing what they love and they're doing it together to impact future generations and help us create a healthier planet. So I have Love Loud in the background by intention because I thought that was really, really interesting. And the last big idea that we hosted, it was a 102-year-old female-led, female-founded company as well. So we're trying to like create these dynamics of like different operating models, different origin stories. First, to give folks a sense that like it's possible that you can build something absolutely incredible with someone you share your life with. And if you both have that passion,
Yes.
it just becomes a force multiplier. So
Yes.
I do want to ask you something very specific, which you mentioned compliance is not just the driver. Earth and nature, biodiversity are now meaningful stakeholders, whether it's through double materiality, CSRD, TNFD. You and I have talked about critical planetary risk areas and how these 5 areas, water availability, soil health, biodiversity, energy demands, agriculture, and food vulnerabilities, these all really help you create that holistic systems view that a supply chain leader may need, not just for risk,
Right.
but thinking about all of those financial levers that you just unpacked with James. Can you give me a little bit more insight into those planetary risk areas and how your platform really helps folks make more critical, holistic decisions?
Yes. So I want to talk about data centers first and then agriculture and water examples here. So we just produced a bold white paper. I was an expert with this with the Women's Leadership and Awesome, the Women's Executive Supply Chain organization that Sherry and I are both a part of and connected with. And it was on balancing the benefits of AI and the health of the planet, which is very serious, right? AI is exploding and it's amazing. And we actually started using AI in 2011. It's a force, right? All the way around. Yet we have to balance as these data centers are being invested in, what, a $7 trillion opportunity McKinsey just reported. That is, we need to make sure that we're not exploiting the Earth's natural resources in a way that if there's not enough water and not enough energy for those data centers to be sustaining for the next X amount of decades, they'll be cut off, right? So we need to be very aware with that systems approach is where are they now being built and managed and expanded upon, and what are those environmental risks? What are the biodiversity risks that are also there? The last thing that company wants to do is use so much water that they're actually taking water away from the communities that they have people employed and work for them. So it's balancing all of these different dynamics and Earth systems needs, economic needs. So Earth knowledge, we can assess, the wildfire risk, the energy demands, the temperature, where in temperature metrics and how much is that going to accelerate over time. So thinking about agriculture, and again, I'm going to zoom in because this is global, but I'm going to zoom in on California right now. So one of the things with agriculture, of course, is they're completely dependent on water. So in California each year, and what Earth Knowledge does is we do an assessment. It's like a water bank account. So through these different processes, we assess how much water is there in the landscape. And that includes evapotranspiration and soil moisture and all of these dynamic ways of assessing. And when there's snow, how much of the snow melt evaporates into the air versus actually can run down into streams. It's so dynamic. But these agriculture companies need to understand they're going to get a certain allotment every year for water, allocation of an allotment of water, which they may get 100% of their allotment or they may get 40% of their allotment. So as supply chain managers, you need to know what you're relying on and how much water availability there might be for the crops and the growers that you're relying on for your products or to supply for your stores. So there's all kinds of information that's really critical that needs to be known to manage these risks and opportunities. California is having what's called climate whiplash. So that means certain parts of the state can be in drought and wildfire risk, while others can have these tumultuous storms that produce flooding. So one of the things that's evolved is they're having an increase in what's called atmospheric rivers. Atmospheric rivers are literally like rivers in the sky that can deliver up to 2 Amazon rivers in one event. Like unbelievable. When I first heard that, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, yes, 2 Amazon rivers. So what has happened now, again, thinking of agriculture, there's groundwater issues, there needs to be groundwater recharge, et cetera. So what's happening is with Earth Knowledge's 10-day forecasts, again, daily forecasts every 10 days. When an atmospheric river is coming in, we will be forecasting, and did last year, where are the locations where there could be transportation disruptions, where there needs to be emergency preparedness responses, where are there locations where there's been wildfires, where that could trigger debris flows, that could bring toxins from the wildfires into neighborhoods, they need to be blocked and protected. So all kinds of critical information that comes from this. But also, these teams have been created to be able to capture some of the rainwater when given permission and have pipelines to drive it underground to recharge the groundwater. So that's one of the ways that then Earth Knowledge is being used with our Earth Systems approach for all of these different decision points, as well as then the recharge, which is so much, Sherry and James, what you're focused on also is how can we be regenerative of nature and how can we continue to be making more and more sustainable decisions. So that's one of the ways that, especially this next year, is being launched big time, and Earth Knowledge is very involved in that process.
It's nature's supply chain, and you think about all your capacity and your constraints. If the planet was, your system of record, and you have inventory that's available in certain parts of California, in your example, you can distribute these assets or this inventory in a way that is serving the people and serving the communities, but also you're making the best use of that inventory that's available when it's available and able to right size it. This is just amazing. This is really, I think,
exactly
talked about voluntary carbon markets or carbon markets. We haven't really got into water markets yet, but I think what you're describing is the next layer of intelligence that people aren't really thinking through.
Right.
This is going to be like something that's needed, I think, for humanity to not only thrive, but survive in the next 10 to 15 years. James, I know you had.
I was just I wanted just to drill down on that a little bit, Sherry. Actually, that point, because I think that sort of story you just shared around California is incredible. Like being able to predict and understand, almost like an early warning system about where these sort of climatic events are going to happen and what can you do differently about it. But I'm curious to hear, because you work with both governmental and corporations kind of across the board. We talk a little bit in sort of 2025 about fear of finding out. Like when we know how bad the problem is, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And that sometimes stops businesses digging in too deep because they don't want to know how the secret sauce is made, because then they've got to do something about it. Do you think the market is ready to value nature and climate risk accurately? Are we still missing that awareness stage within our business leaders?
It so depends on the business, right? And that leadership. I think more than ever, business leaders are ready to really realize it's to their economic benefit, as well as, benefit for the legacy that they want to leave, to think of nature and understand the impacts and decisions that can be informed. Part of what we're seeing is them realizing how the planet actually provides economic risk for them, is helping to wake them up to saying, if I ignore actually understanding how the planet is impacting my business, I'm actually losing money, because extreme weather events now that can cost $1 billion are happening once every 3 weeks. I better not close my eyes anymore. I think, again, another piece with Earth Knowledge, and again, we have like the former director of the National Weather Service, Liu Cellini, who just joined us. I mean, these are amazing pioneers. But one of the things we do with Fortune 500 leaders is to say, look, what we talk about is completely confidential. We have incredible expertise. Our commitment and mission is to provide the most authoritative science-based information in the world. But it's up to you what you actually report or don't report. That's not our responsibility. What our responsibility is, we want to enlighten you in ways that you can work with the planet to make better decisions. One of the companies, tying back to what you said, Sherry, one of the companies said to us, again, global operations and supply chain leaders within this multi-billion-dollar, extremely successful company, said, I think we're making decisions about our inventory in the distribution centers based on last year's sales. We better be looking at Earth Knowledge's forecast, because then we can stock cooling equipment and heating equipment, emergency preparedness equipment, et cetera, right? To be able to, again, provide for their customers and clients, be ahead of what that demand is really going to be. So it's just those light bulbs that go off are just so rewarding.
I love it, because I think one of the other things, Julia, is we haven't talked about transition planning. I think the focus on renewable energy, again, carbon, like CBAM, for example. I know that there are a lot of corporates that are using regulatory tax as a lever to sort of rethink their network strategy, their sourcing strategy, distribution strategy, where and how
Right.
goods are made, and then the communities that they ultimately serve. But this is like next level. People haven't really connected. I think for transition risk planning, obviously capital markets and insurance and lending. But this is the actual corporate entity needs to start
Right.
thinking this way with CBAM and EUDR. A lot of these regulations have been kicked the can, by the way. So that regulatory pressure has been slowly moving forward, moving out. But this organization started thinking the way that you're describing. They started thinking within nature's boundaries, and also looking at things like, well, wait a minute. It's not just site selection. It's also, should we be getting out of this brand? Should we actually divest this brand? Because in 8 years, the modeled cost of offering this within our portfolio will be 10 times what it is now. And I think there are so many reasons that you can use the compliance, the cost, the economic lens, but then there's also the new stream of revenue lens. Is there an example that you could think of where you saw a light bulb moment for someone who, through your ecosystem and the brilliance of the folks that you have on your team, a government or corporate was able to create a net new stream of revenue by incorporating your planetary intelligence platform?
One of the examples that I was talking about before really ties into realizing that this information could actually generate revenue for them by optimizing their inventory in a way that they've never done before. Their inventory was much more based on sales and particular regions and sales within that region than being able to foresee what changes are going to evolve on the planet that would then require certain equipment for those businesses that they sell to. Certainly with crops and agriculture and working with the fresh produce industry, being able to help them understand, or the wine industry, helping them understanding where are there going to be better regions that will grow different grapes in the future, whether it's 5 years out, 10 years out, 30 years out. What are those locations that are better for them to be investing in now, since it does take so long, whether it's almonds or grape, it takes so long to be able to actually have the first harvest that is very, very successful. So these decisions need to be short-term as well as long-term, as where is the best locations for that.
That's a great answer. James, take us home.
No, I was going to say, and this is a good plug, because Sherry and I wrote a white paper a number of years ago about some of the stuff we've been talking about this idea of de-risking business models. When we think about where our clothes are stitched, where our food is grown, where rare earths are taken out of the ground, they're at the bottom of our supply chains. They're the communities that sit on or below the poverty line, and they're most at risk. And I think that is a de-risking exercise for business. And I guess when we started having that conversation, folks got it, but they weren't quite there yet.
Is that 5?
And
That was
it's
5.
at least 5 years ago. It's at least 5 years ago. But I think, Julia, I guess, just to sort of play it forward a bit, it's 2035. What's good look like for Earth knowledge? And I guess if I can push you a little bit further, what is a policy lever that has changed that actually means that this is in the everyday discussion rather than in the most progressive?
What's changed is Mother Earth continues to speak very loudly and accelerating. So the acceleration of these extreme weather events is absolutely bringing some of the companies to their knees. They are unprepared. They didn't realize how volatile that the climate will become, and therefore what risks with their supply chains, operations, and investments that they really have. What's happened with some of the changes that are going on policy-wise, and it's been fascinating in New York Climate Week because it was spoken about multiple times. Some of the largest banks stated, we've spent so much money and time and energy on transition risks, but we're realizing we haven't actually been assessing our physical asset risks with our operations, supply chains, and investments. And we're going to do that now. We need to do that now. And we're wondering, why in the world did we not start doing that 10 years ago? That is some of what's happening. Is there's some release of some of the pressure for reporting, which is actually helping some of the companies get real with how much they're depending on the planet and being impacted financially. And they need to do something about it. You have to realize how dependent that we all are on the planet. We've got to be able to have the metrics to understand that and evaluate that and make those changes.
In 2035, if you close your eyes and imagine 10 years from now, what does that look like?
What our mission is, commitment, is providing the most scientific, authoritative information in the world with this systems approach and get it into as many companies, organizations, government agencies as possible. That's what we're focused on, and that's what we want in 10 years, is it being integrated with other risk information, with other supply chain information, that is, decision-making tools, integrated into all these different platforms that are already being used that need that additional layer of Earth systems data and information. That's what we want to see happen. It's going to build a better planet, build a more profitable planet, build a way for us to really feel good about the legacy that we're leaving behind. Just, again, people, profits, and planet. We can do it.
I love it. Thank you,
Amazing.
Julia. Thank you for sharing your insights, your story, all the great work that you and Planetary Intelligence, how it can be used to transform supply chains into regenerative catalysts in a regenerative future. And I hope that folks walk away from this chat and they really digest that there's a way forward. There's a path, that the future belongs to companies that make nature a true partner in their operations. So thank you so much for joining.
Yes,
James, any
great.
final words?
No, I mean, that's been incredible. It just feels like the future is here now. I guess, it's that level of insight, that level of interconnectedness that businesses really struggle with. And so hearing you talk about kind of how you're developing that and how that kind of conversation carries on, I think it'd be great if it wasn't 2035, it was kind of 2027 that we all reached it. But I think we've got to do a bit more work to get there first.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
Well,
thank you, Sherry and James. I admire and I'm so excited about your vision and ways that you're communicating it, bringing on really talented people that communicate ways to revolutionize supply chains. It's terrific. Thank you so much for including me.
thank you, Julia.